N- The folder was on my lap before I sat down. Brown leather, soft at the corners from 40 years of being carried around, and heavier than it looked. My son didn't notice it. He was too busy holding my elbow like I was made of glass, walking me toward the desk where the bank manager waited with that polite, professional smile that bankers wear when they're trying to figure out who the real client is. Right here, Mom. Watch your step. There was no step. The floor was flat carpet, the kind that swallows the sound of expensive shoes. But he said it anyway, loud enough for the manager to hear. Loud enough for the woman 2 desks over to glance up. That was the point. I let him guide me. I let him pull out the chair. I sat down, set the folder on my knees, and folded my hands over it the way I used to fold them over my purse in church. Mrs. Hathaway, thank you for coming in today. The manager extended her hand. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, nameplate that said, Renata Voss. I'm so glad we could find a time that works for both of you. It's a pleasure to meet you, dear. My son cleared his throat before I'd even finished the sentence. She prefers being called by her first name. It's Constance. Just Constance is fine. I smiled at Renata. Mrs. Hathaway is fine. There was a beat. Just a small one, but Renata caught it. I watched her catch it, the way her eyes flicked from him to me and back. And I knew in that second that today might go differently than my son had planned. He sat down beside me and pulled out his own folder. His was new, stiff cardboard, the kind they sell at office supply stores in packs of 10. Inside, I knew, were the documents he'd been emailing his wife about for the past 3 months. Documents he didn't know I'd been reading copies of, because he didn't know that the email account he'd set up for me back when his father died still forwarded everything to a second address. An address only my granddaughter and I have access to. Mom, he said, turning slightly so his shoulder was between me and the manager. Why don't you let me handle the paperwork part? You can just sit and relax. I'm relaxed. You know what I mean. I did know what he meant. He meant, don't talk. He meant, don't ask questions. He meant, let me do this fast before you remember why we're here. I reached up and patted his hand, the way I used to when he was 8 years old and convinced there was a monster under his bed. He flinched just a little and pulled back. Renata, I said, before we begin, my son has something he'd like to tell you about my mental state. Don't you, sweetheart? His face went white. I didn't plan to start it that way. I want to be honest about that. I'd come in with a different idea, a quieter one. Something about waiting for him to make his move and then countering it. But the second I sat down and saw that polished cardboard folder on his lap, I thought about my husband. I thought about the morning he died, 11 years ago this March, and the promise I'd made him at the kitchen table the night before, when neither of us knew it was the last time we'd sit there together. Don't let them push you around, Connie, he'd said. He'd been holding his coffee with both hands because his arthritis was bad that week. When I'm gone, they'll come at you sideways, especially him. He always thinks he knows better. I'd laughed at the time. Our boy was 43 then, a financial advisor with his own office, 2 kids in private school. The idea of him coming at me sideways seemed almost insulting to him. But my husband had known. He'd known the way mothers and fathers always know, deep in some quiet, folded-up place that doesn't get spoken out loud. And I'd promised. I promised him I wouldn't be a fool about it. So when my son started talking, smooth and careful, about how Mom had been struggling lately, how she'd been forgetting things, how it might be time to consolidate accounts so that someone trustworthy could keep an eye, I sat there and I let him talk, because the longer he talked, the more rope I had. Renata listened. She nodded in the right places. She typed a few notes. She asked a few questions, and his answers were careful and rehearsed. Mrs. Hathaway forgot a doctor's appointment last month, he said. I had not. I had told him I wasn't going because the appointment had been with a geriatric psychiatrist his wife had booked for me without asking. I'd called and rescheduled with my own doctor instead. She left the stove on twice in October. I had not. The stove had a knob that needed replacing and would sometimes appear to be off when it wasn't fully clicked. I'd had it fixed in November. I have the receipt. She's been confused about money. We found a check she'd written for the wrong amount. I had written a check to the church for an amount that included a memorial donation for an old friend. He had assumed it was a mistake because he didn't know about the friend. He had built a story, a small, careful story, the kind you build brick by brick, where each brick by itself looks like nothing but together they wall in a person. By the time he was finished, Renata had 3 pages of notes, and his hand was hovering near the manila folder, ready to slide out the joint account application that would put him as primary signatory on everything I owned. "Mrs. Hathaway," Renata said, turning to me with a kindness I appreciated, "is there anything you'd like to add, or any questions you have?" "Yes, dear. Quite a few." I unzipped the leather folder. The sound was very small, but my son went still next to me. The kind of still I hadn't seen since he was a teenager, and I'd come home early from work and found a bottle of his father's whiskey on his nightstand. I took out the first piece of paper. "This is the result of a cognitive assessment I had done 6 weeks ago by Dr. Selters and Ted, Eleanor Pritchard, who I'm sure your bank has on file as a board-certified geriatric specialist. The score is at the top. 30 out of 30. She wrote a note at the bottom, too. Would you like to read it, or shall I?" Renata accepted the paper. Her eyes moved across it. She did not look up. "This," I said, taking out the second sheet, "is a letter from my attorney, a man named Theodore Ashby, of Ashby and Reeve. He's been my attorney for 9 years. He drew up my trust 4 years ago. The letter confirms that I have legal capacity, that I have not appointed anyone as power of attorney except him in matters of my legal representation, and that any attempt to access, transfer, or freeze my assets without his direct involvement should be reported to him immediately. His phone number is at the bottom." My son said something. I didn't catch the word. It might not have been a word. "This," I said, taking out the third sheet, "is a copy of my trust documents. The originals are with Mr. Ashby. The trust holds the house. It holds the brokerage accounts. It holds the certificates of deposit. The trustee is Mr. Ashby. The successor trustee is my granddaughter, Wren. The beneficiaries upon my death are, in this order, my granddaughter Wren, the public library where I worked for 31 years, the animal shelter on Marsh Road, and the scholarship fund at my husband's alma mater." I paused. I looked at my son. I made myself do it slowly because I wanted to remember his face. "You are not on this document, sweetheart. Not anywhere. I removed you 18 months ago, the morning after I overheard you on the phone in my own kitchen telling your wife that if I lasted another 5 years it would, and I quote, eat into the inheritance." The silence was a thing you could touch. Renata sat very still. She was a professional. She was not going to react. But her hand had stopped typing, and her eyes were on me now in a way that they had not been before. "There's one more thing," I said. I pulled out the fourth document. This one I had hesitated over last night, sitting at my kitchen table with the lamp on and the rain coming down outside. I'd asked myself if I really wanted to go this far. If a mother could go this far and still call herself a mother. I decided yes. I had decided yes because my husband had asked me to 11 years ago, and because I had loved him, and because some promises you keep even when they hurt. "This is a transcript," I said, "from a phone conversation between my son and his wife, recorded on the 11th of last month in my dining room when they thought I was upstairs taking a nap. I was not. I was in the pantry looking for the cinnamon. The recorder was on the table because I'd been using it earlier to dictate a letter to my sister who can no longer read small print. I forgot to turn it off. That part was even true. I had forgotten. The forgetting was a small grace, because if I'd remembered, I might never have learned what they were planning, and I might have walked into this bank today without my folder. In the conversation, I said, my son tells his wife that, and I quote, "We just need to get her name off the accounts before she catches on." The bank manager is new and won't push back. Just bring her in, smile a lot, and we're done by Tuesday. I set the paper down on Renata's desk. Today is Tuesday. My son stood up. The chair scraped. He said, "Mom, Mom, wait." "Sit down," I said. I did not raise my voice. I have never raised my voice at my children, not once in my life, because my husband once told me that the day a mother starts shouting is the day her children stop hearing her, and I wanted to be heard for as long as I could be. "Sit down. We are not finished." He sat down. "We are not finished." I think it surprised him as much as it surprised me. "Renata," I said, "I would like to formally request that no changes be made to any of my accounts at this institution without the direct, written, notarized permission of myself and my attorney. I would like that note flagged on every account. I would also like to request that, going forward, my son not be permitted access to any information about my accounts, balances, or activity. He has no legal claim to that information. I'm sure your compliance department can confirm that." She nodded. "Of course, Mrs. Hathaway. I'll have the flags placed before you leave today. Thank you, dear." "Mom." My son's voice was strange. Lower. "Mom, can we talk in the hallway?" "No." "Mom, please." "No, sweetheart. Whatever you want to say, you can say in front of Renata, or you can say it to your father the next time you visit his grave. Which I'll note is something you've done exactly once since the funeral." His face crumpled. I want to be honest about that too. He is my son, and his face crumpled, and there was a part of me, a part that has been a mother for 51 years and does not know how to stop, that wanted to reach out and put my hand on his cheek and tell him it was all right, that wanted to undo all of this and go home and pretend. That part is real. It will probably always be real. But there is another part of me, an older part. The part that buried a husband and raised 2 children and cared for a dying mother and worked 31 years sorting other people's books, and that part said no. That part said, he came in here today to take everything from you. He brought you in like a prop. He spoke about you in front of a stranger as if you were not in the room. He tried to make you small, and he is your son, and you are still allowed to refuse to be made small, so I did not reach out. I did not touch his cheek. I sat with my hands folded over my leather folder, and I waited for him to finish. "I just wanted to help," he said. His voice was rough. "Mom, I just wanted to help you." "No, you didn't." "Yes, I know you wanted the house, and the accounts, and the bonds your father bought when you were born that he told you about every Christmas that you used to roll your eyes at when you were a teenager. You wanted them now, while I'm still alive, because waiting means I might spend some of it on a roof repair or a trip to see my sister or, God forbid, leaving it to your daughter, who actually calls me on Sunday afternoons. Your wife wanted the house. You wanted to please her. I understand the math. I am not stupid, sweetheart, and I never have been. And the fact that you and your wife thought I was... I stopped. I had to. The words had gotten away from me, and that was not what I'd planned. I'd planned to stay calm. My husband would have wanted me calm. I took a breath. The bank smelled like coffee and paper and the faint chemical sweetness of a carpet cleaner. Outside the window, behind Renata's desk, I could see a man walking a small dog along the sidewalk. It was an ordinary Tuesday for him. "I love you," I said. I had to say it. "I have loved you since the second they put you in my arms. That has not changed. It will not change. But you are not getting access to anything I have while I am alive or after I am dead until you understand what you did today. And maybe not even then. I don't know yet. I'll have to think about it for a while." He was crying. Quietly. Not the loud weeping I'd seen from him only twice in his life. Once when his father was diagnosed, once when his daughter was born. This was different. This was the crying of a grown man who has just realized that the cliff he was walking toward was real. "Renata," I said, "could you give us a moment?" "Of course." She stood up immediately. "I'll just be down the hall." Take all the time you need." She left. The glass door clicked shut behind her. My son and I sat there in the suddenly quieter office, and for a long time neither of us spoke. "Did Ren know?" he said finally. "Yes." "For how long?" 18 months. His shoulders came down. He stared at the carpet. "I knew she'd been weird with me at Easter," he said. "I thought it was because of her boyfriend. I thought—" He laughed. It was an awful laugh. "I thought I'd say something to you. Have you talked to her? Have you talked to her? Christ. Ren is a good girl. She came to me right after she found out. I asked her not to say anything. I told her I'd handle it in my own time, in my own way. She has done what I asked. Don't blame her." "I don't. Don't blame your wife either in front of me. She is your wife. That's between the two of you. But understand that she is not welcome in my house anymore. Not for Thanksgiving. Not for Christmas. Not for my birthday. Not until I see something that tells me she has changed her mind about who I am." "Okay. And understand that I am not angry. I want to be very clear about that. I am not angry, sweetheart. I am tired. There is a difference." He nodded. He was looking at his hands now. "What happens next?" he said. "You go home. You think about it. You write me a letter, not an email, a letter in your own handwriting on paper, and you bring it to my house and you put it in my mailbox, and then you leave. Don't knock. I'm not ready to talk yet. When I'm ready, I'll call you. Okay, you may not get the answer you want. You should be prepared for that." "Okay." He stood. He was still, my boy. There was a moment where he leaned toward me as if he might kiss the top of my head, the way he had since he was tall enough to do it. And then he stopped himself, and he just stood there for a second. And then he walked out of Renata's office without looking back. I waited until he was gone. I waited until I saw, through the glass partition, his shape moving across the lobby and out the front door. Then I let myself put my face in my hands, just for a moment. Just for one breath, because there is a kind of crying that you cannot do in front of your children, even when they are 45 years old and have just tried to take everything from you. After a minute, I sat up. I wiped my eyes with the handkerchief in my purse. I closed my folder. Renata came back in. She closed the door behind her. "Mrs. Hathaway. Are you all right?" "I'm all right, dear. Thank you. Can I get you a glass of water?" "Yes, that would be lovely." She brought me water in a real glass, not a paper cup, which I appreciated. She sat down across from me and waited until I'd taken a sip. "I want to tell you something," she said. "And I shouldn't, professionally. So I'm going to tell you as a person, not as the manager of this branch. Is that all right?" "Yes." "My grandmother," she said, 12 years ago, her son, my uncle, did almost exactly what your son tried to do today. He got her name off the accounts. He moved into her house. By the time anyone in the family realized, she was in a memory care facility she did not need to be in, and there was nothing left of her savings. She died there. She was not confused. She was lonely, and she was angry, and she could not get anyone to listen, because everyone had decided already that she could not be trusted to know her own mind. I'm sorry. What I want to say is, I see a lot of these meetings, more than you'd think. And most of the time, the parent is sitting where you sat today, and they don't know. Or they know, and they don't have the paperwork. Or they have the paperwork, and they don't have the courage. You had all three. I will remember today for the rest of my career. That's very kind, dear. Drive safely going home. I will. I drove home. The rain had stopped. The sky was the gray-white color it gets in November when the year is making up its mind whether to give us one last warm afternoon or just go ahead and turn cold. I took the long way, past a cemetery where my husband is buried, and I did not stop. because I was not ready to stop, but I slowed down and I rolled the window an inch and I said, "I kept the promise, love. It's done." I think he heard me. I think a person can hear a thing like that even from where my husband is. When I got home, my granddaughter's car was in the driveway. She was sitting on the porch swing with 2 travel mugs of coffee, the way she has been every Tuesday afternoon for the past 6 weeks since I told her this was the day. She stood up when she saw me. She did not run to me. She is 26 years old, and she knows me. She knows that when I have been through something hard, I do not want to be rushed. I want to walk up the steps in my own time. I walked up the steps. She handed me my coffee. It was the way I like it. 2 sugars and a splash of cream in the mug with the chipped rim that her grandfather gave me one Mother's Day in 1989. "How'd it go?" she said. "It went. Are you okay?" "I will be." She nodded. She did not push. She sat back down on the swing and patted the cushion next to her, and I sat down, and we drank our coffee in the cold November light, and after a while she said, "Grandma, I'm proud of you." I did not say anything for a long time. I was not sure I could. Then I said, "I'm proud of me too, sweetheart. I think I'm allowed to be." "You are." We sat there until our coffee got cold. The neighbor across the street came out to put her trash bins on the curb and we waved back. A flock of geese went over, very high, going south. The porch swing made the small creaking sound it has always made. The sound my husband never got around to fixing. The sound I have decided I am never going to fix either. Because some sounds are part of a house and a life. And you don't replace them just because you can. After a while, my granddaughter said, "What do you want to do tomorrow?" "I want to call your great aunt," I said. "And I want to clean out the upstairs closet. And I want to plant the tulip bulbs before the ground freezes. And I want to start a list." "A list of what?" "Of all the things I'm going to do now that I'm not afraid anymore." She put her head on my shoulder. She is not a small girl. She is taller than I am, but she put her head on my shoulder the way she did when she was 4, and I put my arm around her, and we sat in the swing in the cold light, and I closed my eyes for just a moment, and I let myself feel it. I let myself feel the whole long weight of 51 years of being a mother, and 11 years of being a widow, and 72 years of being a woman, in a world that has, more than once, tried to convince me that I did not understand what I was looking at. I have always understood. I think most of us do. We just learn after a while to stop saying it out loud because saying it out loud costs more than people know. But today, I said it out loud. I said it in a leather folder and a 30 out of 30 and a transcript and a trust document and a quiet voice in the bank manager's office. I said it as clearly as I have ever said anything in my life. And the world did not end. The geese kept flying. The swing kept creaking. My granddaughter's hair smelled like the shampoo her grandfather used to buy her when she stayed over as a little girl. The kind I still keep in the upstairs bathroom, just in case. And I sat there, on my own porch, in my own house, with my own granddaughter, and I thought about what my husband had said to me at the kitchen table that last night. "Don't let them push you around, Connie." I didn't, love. I didn't. I have thought a lot, in the weeks since that Tuesday afternoon at the bank, about how a thing like this happens. Not the meeting itself. The years before it. The slow drift of it. My son did not wake up one morning and decide to take everything from me. That is not how it works, in my experience. It works the way water works on a stone. A small disrespect here. An eye roll there. A conversation in my own kitchen that he believed I could not understand. Each one, a drop. Over time, the drops carved a shape. And the shape was a man who could sit beside his mother in a bank and speak about her in the third person and feel, in the moment, that he was doing the right thing. I am not telling you this to excuse him. I am telling you this because I think it is the only honest way to understand what happened. He treated me as smaller than I was, again and again. And each time I let it pass, because I was tired, because I loved him, because I did not want to fight at the dinner table. I taught him that I could be made smaller still. That is a hard thing to admit. It is mine to admit, and I am admitting it. What saved me in the end was not cleverness. It was the habit of a long life. I had kept my receipts. I had kept my doctor's appointments. I had a lawyer because my husband had insisted, 20 years ago, that we both have one. I had a granddaughter who watched and listened and told me the truth when she heard it. None of that was magic. It was the small daily work of a woman who, even when she felt invisible, kept her own records. So if there is anything I would say to a woman my age, sitting somewhere right now in a quiet kitchen and wondering if her own children have started to look at her differently, I would say this. Keep your papers. Know your doctor. Have a lawyer of your own, even if you have to scrape to afford one. Tell one young person in your family who has good eyes and a good heart what is true, and let them be the witness with you. And most of all, do not let the slow drops of disrespect carve you smaller than you are. The first time someone speaks about you in the third person while you are sitting in the room, say something. Even if your voice shakes. I am not bitter. I want to be clear about that. I am still my son's mother. I will be my son's mother. I will be my son's mother on the day I die. But I have learned, late and at a cost, that loving someone does not mean letting them erase you. The best love I have ever known, my husband's, my granddaughter's, has always made me bigger, not smaller. That is the difference. I see it now. I wish I had seen it sooner.